Would like for everybody to vote for Chris Wiseman. Everybody in District 2, Pueblo County Commissioner's race, vote for Chris Wiseman. There's only one person that's going to offer hope for the 900 homeless kids in Pueblo City, or any of the homeless kids in Pueblo County, or the working class, or the unions, or the poor. There's only one candidate that gives a shit about the most economically vulnerable out here, and that's Chris Wiseman. And Chris Wiseman, he's been hobnobbing with governors and other political elite for decades, since the 1980s. He knows what's going on. Chris Wiseman is qualified. Why would anybody, what makes Zach Swearingen qualified to run 200 cops, 12 departments, and $200 million? Because he was on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a few years? That's it? Zach Swearingen needs a lot more than just being on Planning and Zoning for a year to know how the entire county is supposed to be. Keep Pueblo progressive. Keep Pueblo progressive. It's great that the Democratic Party is controlling Pueblo. Keep it that way by being a progressive. Why would anybody argue against being a progressive? Because you're a regressive, oppressive, low-life asshole piece of shit? You want to progress, and that word is interesting. I've had arguments with lots of folks about what is progressive, right? Isn't industry progressive? What about robots and machines? Aren't those things progressive? So being progressive, the Democratic Party keeps running away from this, and if the Republicans ever wise up and they go progressive, that'd be the end of the Democratic Party. What would you go to the Democrats for if the Republicans started caring about the homeless and the poor? Well, that's what the Democrats traditionally were supposed to be for, but now they're not. So if the Republicans start giving a shit about unions and the working class, the working masses, and the poor and the homeless, that'd be it for the Democratic jurisdiction. The 3 county commissioners don't just control their own district, they control all of the county and the unincorporated areas and the non-home rule cities. So Pueblo West, Rye, Colorado City, Boone, Avondale, Vineland, this will be under Chris Wiseman or Zach Swearingen. It's under Sal Pace right now. So you'll have Terry Hart will be left and Garrison Ortiz. So either Swearingen or Chris Wiseman, most likely. Chris Wiseman will be working with Garrison Ortiz and Terry Hart. They'll work better together. I mean, Zach doesn't seem like he would work well with others, but Chris Wiseman would. Chris Wiseman is compassionate. He actually gives a shit. Zach Swearingen, he doesn't have a war on poverty. He's not going to do anything about the 18% poverty rate or the 25% children that are in poverty in Pueblo County. Zach Swearingen doesn't have a war on poverty. He's not going to do anything about the homeless. If you fail, who gives a shit, kid? That's your problem, right? So Zach Swearingen, he doesn't care about the poor, the working class, unions, homeless people. Quick point on jurisdiction. A quick point, Pueblo County has no jurisdiction in Pueblo City except in county and state buildings. So Pueblo City is its own autonomous region with home rule municipality, home rule jurisdiction. So Pueblo County goes up to the point where Pueblo City's edge is. The sheriff's ultimate fascist power starts at Pueblo County's edges and ending at the edge of Pueblo City, where the chief of police's ultimate fascist power takes over. So again, Pueblo County Sheriff's ultimate fascist power starts at Pueblo County's edges on the outside and works its way into close up to the edge of Pueblo City, where the chief of police of Pueblo City, which is appointed by the mayor, or will be appointed by the mayor, appointed by a city manager now, but that's where his jurisdiction, his ultimate fascist power takes over. So that's the jurisdiction. Pueblo City has been a home rule city since 1911, officially since 1911, but probably since it comes to who runs Pueblo, well, you have to first say who runs Pueblo County, who runs Pueblo City. Who's going to run Pueblo County? Either Zach Swearingen or Chris Wiseman is going to run all of Pueblo County. They're going to run Pueblo West, Rye, Colorado City, Boone, Avondale, Vineland, Blend, Beulah Valley, Salt Creek. This is all under the jurisdiction of Chris Wiseman and Sal Pace and Garrison Ortiz and Terry Hart. So the mayor is the most powerful man in Pueblo City. The 3 county commissioners are the most powerful men in Pueblo County, equally, perfectly equal triumvirate of power. They all get one vote. They can vote on the budget. They write the laws. They're the executives. They're the most powerful men also in their respective districts. In a way, they're the mayor of their respective districts. So who's going to be the mayor of District Number 2, Pueblo County District Number 2? Chris Wiseman, hopefully, if the Democrats are on. Make it simple. The leaders, the government of Pueblo City controls Pueblo City, and then the government of Pueblo County controls Pueblo County. So that just makes it simple. That means you need to know the 3 county commissioners, because those are the 3 kings, and you're going to need to know the mayor. So the Pueblo City has been a home rule city since 1911, officially since 1911, but probably since 1873, since Pueblo City is 3 years younger than the state of Colorado herself. And they've been, running their own shit for the last 150 years. They're going to continue to run their own shit. So something interesting that I thought about, in each of the 3 county commissioners, they have their own respective districts. Can they buck Pueblo City's authority in their respective districts? Also, the county have buildings, state buildings and county buildings inside of Pueblo City. So they don't have jurisdiction in Pueblo City proper or Pueblo City itself, but they do have jurisdiction in those buildings, right? They own the Venn diagram. Some of the jurisdictions overlap with one another. But if I was a city official, if I'm a county official, if I'm any kind of local official, then I'm going to be kicking the state and the federal government's ass. If I'm the city, I'm going to kick the county's ass on the reg. Bankers, too, I'll kick the bankers' ass. That home rule power ain't no joke. So out of the San Luis Valley, there's only, 4 counties that have a home rule city. There's only 1 home rule city in Pueblo County, and that's Pueblo City, and all the rest of them are under the domain of Chris Wiseman, or will be under the domain of Chris Wiseman. Pueblo West, Rye, Colorado City, Boone, Avondale, Vineland, Blend, Beulah Valley, and Salt Creek. So Chris Wiseman is way better than Zach Swearingen for many reasons. Chris Wiseman's got a 5-year plan. He's got a comprehensive homelessness plan, so no Pueblo County never has to worry about living on the streets. He also wants to take government out to the people. He wants to open up offices in Pueblo West, Rye, Colorado City, Boone. Chris Wiseman also has a community and township outreach program. So the community and township outreach program, he's going to try to get offices out in these cities and then man these offices during specific designated office hours in the towns of Pueblo West. There's population 40-something, 50,000. Rye, Colorado City, population 2,000. Boone, Avondale, Vineland. There's other cities in Pueblo, Blend, Beulah Valley, and Salt Creek. I don't know why he's not getting office hours in those cities. Perhaps they're not in District 2, but they could feel forgotten. I don't know how small those communities are, but it seems like, we're all in this together. If you live in Pueblo County, then Chris Wiseman should represent you. So Blend, Beulah Valley, and Salt Creek also need office hours, but just the fact that he's saying this, Zach Swearingen isn't talking about no community outreach. He don't have no office hours out into the townships. So Chris Wiseman's on the right. Reasons why you should not vote for Zach Swearingen. He wants to relocate the entire Fort Carson to come down to Pueblo. Not start a brand new fort, but he wants to just pick Fort Carson up and then put it in Pueblo. He's wants corporate wealth. It's just a dumb idea. I mean, I guess the sentiments is okay, but what? Pro-corporate welfare Republican. So he believes in not welfare. He doesn't want to help the homelessness, right? They got to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. But if you're a minor league baseball developer, if you're a rich man who wants to take our taxes, Zach Swearingen was all for corporate welfare. He couldn't wait to give corporate welfare to these. He said, leave it up to the voters. Let's vote on this thing. But Chris Wiseman came out and just forcefully and strongly said, no corporate welfare. No, we have money. We need to spend our money on, these 1A projects. We got other priorities here. So Chris Wiseman said, no, I'm not going to spend any money for a minor league baseball team. Whereas Zach Swearingen said, well, Pueblo County were to come up with their own National Basketball Association team, an NBA team or an NFL team, for professional football, professional basketball, or professional baseball, MLB. It's not even professional. It wasn't even the major leagues. It's not NBA, NFL, or the MLB, but a minor league team. That's not going to send Pueblo to the billionaires, or everybody's not going to get rich off of some minor league baseball team. Are you fucking kidding? Are you kidding? That's Chris Wiseman saw that stupid idea for the stupid idea that it was. He's also a land Nazi. Zach Swearingen is a member of the Pueblo County Planning Commission. He's a Nazi when it comes to what Puebloan Countyans can do with their land and what they can't do with their land. You must do this, you must do that, and pulling permits out for every little tiny little thing. $200 permit. So he's been doing the Pueblo County Planning Commission for quite some time, and he's been enforcing land restrictions. So is he helping to develop the homesteaders, or is he stopping that? A bunch of stuff out there, so just go onto his website and check him out, right? Zach Swearingen. You got 2 choices for County Commissioner, District number 2, so it's either going to be him or the other one. But you have, look at what he says when it comes to vocational schooling. He says in his list, we need more vocational schooling, which we do, but then he also says we need to increase hands-on trade education programs. What's the difference between vocation and hands-on trade education programs? What the hell does he think vocation education is? Vocation education is hands-on trade education. It's the same thing. So he has two different planks, which mean the exact same thing. So when he says hands-on education, does it mean something different? Like Donald Trump hands-on? I mean, he is a Republican. Zach Swearingen doesn't understand what vocational schooling is. Zach Swearingen is a land Nazi. Zach Swearingen is for corporate welfare. Zach Swearingen also thinks that the homeless folks are the ones who are owning the poppy fields and developing harvesting the poppy fields. They're the ones with the tractors and the land. And then they're the reason why we have this heroin epidemic here. So Zach Swearingen is for Nixon's war on drugs. He's for Giuliani's broken window theory. He's opposed to Richard Nixon's EPA. Some heroin addicts are homeowners or live in a home with a homeowner, so not all homeless people are drug addicts. In fact, some homeless don't do any drugs at all. Some homeless people are very quiet, salt-of-the-earth people who wouldn't even harm a fly. They wouldn't even harm a fly. So just to assume that the homeless people are responsible for the heroin addiction or crisis, that's fucking bullshit. They're miserable and sad, so that's the reason why they're doing heroin if they're able to find a nickel or whatever, how much it costs. But the poppy fields are not in Pueblo City. The poppy fields are in Afghanistan, right? So that means they have to be bigwigs. Why do we have a heroin? The poppy fields are in Afghanistan, and that means the bigwigs. That means that's some bankers, that's some wealthy people, people that have airplane travel who can get freight into, going through customs. How the fuck is the heroin even getting here? Who the fuck is making this heroin? Who's raising the poppy fields? Where the hell are these damn poppy fields at? If we're being serious about, stopping heroin, but he equates homelessness with heroin. And I think that's bullshit. That's not fair. You need to divide them up. You do need to segregate them. But see, Zach Swearingen doesn't give a shit about the homeless, so he's going to try to put the heroin needles in the hands of the homeless, whether they want it in their hands or not. Imagine the homeless people that don't, do the drugs. They have to look out for the heroin needles all over the places where they're, roaming around. So if anything, the good homeless people have much more to fear from the bigwigs, the poppy fields out of Afghanistan than, so Zach wants to say we cannot allow our citizens to feel afraid of being in a parking lot after dark for fear of being just about where the thrust of the care comes from. So for Zach Swearingen, it's not if you're poor, or if you're working class, if you're in a union, or if you're homeless. He doesn't really want to make your economic, and it's all about the economy, right? It's the economy, stupid. That's how Bill Clinton got elected. So it's all about the economy. Zach Swearingen is sitting there saying that we need to make sure that the homeless people, when they ask for change, oh my God, our citizens are afraid when they're in a parking lot after dark for fear of being approached aggressively for that handout. That's verbatim. So he's one of those people. Zach Swearingen is one of those people that says we need to give people a hand up, not a handout. And that's, I understand the sentiment, but some people need a handout. Some people need a shelter. Some people don't have a house. They need a house, right? They need clothing. They need water. They need food. And nothing, you can't encourage them. And, getting a job is how to get out of that situation for the long term. But in the short term, so essentially Zach Swearingen he wants to protect the piece of shit, heartless bastards who don't want to give their last remaining story. The Pueblo chief in there talking about how a homeless person had asked an elder lady for some change, and then she was real snotty about it, and she was kind of like real dismissive with him, and so the homeless person threw the change that he had at her, and she was like, it just didn't make any sense. He was asking for change, and then here he is throwing the change at me. Now, that's who Zach Swearingen wants to protect. He doesn't really give a shit about the homeless person on the street. If we had a homeless shelter, we could just say, okay, here's, go to 125 bumfuck lane out in the middle of the county. That's where you need to go. We would all be compassionate. We would know exactly where to send any homeless person that we saw where to go. But instead, there is no homeless policy. So if there's a homeless person on the street, well, sorry about your fucking luck, right? So, and if they aren't going to give you a few pennies, you could say politely, no, thank you. But if you're real shitty to them, so that's who Zach Swearingen wants to protect, the shitty, heartless bastards who don't want to give a few pennies to the Pueblo's 900 homeless children, the heartless economic inequality. The economic inequality is very big. In fact, a lot of people say it's a poor town. It's not just a poor town. There's wealthy people there. And Pueblo West actually sort of siphons all the wealthy people to go. There should be a Pueblo East. Pueblo City should establish a Pueblo East to compete with Pueblo West, because that was a huge deal. I think Pueblo City actually sued Pueblo West when they got the Metropolitan District approved by the General Assembly 50 years ago or so. So Zach wants to protect those heartless bastards that don't want to give any of their change up, but he doesn't give a shit about people on the streets. He wants to protect the heartless Lori Winter twats who are okay with their brothers and sisters sleeping in a ditch. 900 of Pueblo's kids are homeless. So jail time is a solution. Is that what Zach Swearingen is going to do? There's no homeless shelter, so where the hell, when Pueblo, their own children, goes homeless, where are they going to go? You're going to spend $700 a day for them to eat in jail instead of these Republican capitalists, all these so-called fiscal conservatives, right? They're fiscally conservative. It's cheaper. It's cheaper to give a shit about the homeless people, you know? To think that everybody that's homeless came from the outside, that's not true. Pueblo creates their own homeless. They are popping out homeless kids. They are putting the homeless kids through the education system, and they're not giving the kids any homes or houses, and job opportunities are scant, and what the hell? They're just being taught to be obedient in these school systems. So nobody's giving a shit. Nobody's giving a damn. And that's day to day. So imagine that trauma just piling on top of one another. But that's, instead of spending $700 a day on jails, meals, legal work, and all this shit, that's about how much it costs to house a homeless person in jail. We would only spend $10 a day if we actually had compassion. So for these capitalists, for these Republican fiscal conservatives, it's cheaper to give a shit about your fellow man. And then there is, shit and stuff. So get them out of sight, but pay for. I'm worried about Zach Swearingen getting to office because he doesn't give a shit about the lower classes, anybody that is poorer than himself. He doesn't care about the working classes. He didn't care about the unions or the poor or the homeless people. He just doesn't give a shit about them. He is in favor of corporate welfare. He'll sit there and say, don't give any money to the homeless people, but when a minor league baseball developer comes into town, he says, here's millions of dollars. Go ahead, baseball developer. We're going to get a minor league baseball development here. Let's spend millions of dollars for this, but we're not going to spend one penny, not one dime, to do the Christian duty of giving a shit about somebody who is starving. Feed them. If they're not clothed, you give them clothes. If they don't, they're thirsty, give them water. That's Christian. That's Christianity. If you misinterpreted Christianity any other way, well, then you are more fucked up than. So the minor league team isn't going to send anybody to the billionaires row, except for maybe the developer. But the teams, every one of the things on his platform, he wants to lower crime, and he wants to improve relations with higher education facilities. He wants to create more high-paying manufacturing jobs. He wants to address this issue, that issue. They're very vague. And one thing was help veterans. He wants to help veterans. Unless they're homeless, then they don't get a homeless shelter. So fuck the veterans if they're homeless or poor or in a working class union or part of the working masses, right? But he says help, they're very vague. So it's like, okay, I agree with that, but how? How are you going to help the veterans, right? How are you going to help? What do you mean when you say help the veterans? And are they going to get, privileges the rest aren't going to get? Like, what do you mean specifically? So I agree with all those things. We should help veterans. We should lower crime. We should, address all these different issues. So the devil's in the details. He's sitting there talking about getting more staff to serve warrants, more staff to serve warrants. As if, what, we don't have a problem in Pueblo County? Do we have a big old stack of warrants that people just aren't passing out because Zach Swearingen is calling for more staff to pass out a bunch of warrants? So we have a lot of warrants we need to get passed out, or does he want to issue a bunch of warrants? Is he going to try to throw anybody and everybody in jail? What is his plan? What is he talking about? So we need more staff to serve warrants. I would assume they're already serving warrants to begin with. So in addition to it, right, we need to hire more judges to issue those warrants. And then we're going to need to hire more criminals to have the judges issue those warrants that the new staff can then serve those warrants. I just don't feel like serving warrants that's his priority. We need to serve more warrants. So I hate to say this, but I have to say this because I don't think he understands the three branches of government. Sometimes soldiers can serve a good check on the police, like Shamar Thomas of the Marine Corps, or during the Watch riots. Once you've served in the military, you see that the cops are the exact same as yourself, but sometimes the problem with Zachary Lundergan Swearingen, Zachariah, is he has a limp dick fascism. He's a Trumpist. He's a trumpet. He is Donald Trump in, the local county's clothing. So this limp dick fascism, he is talking about improving different things for the police, which, I don't generally disagree with, but he doesn't say anything about checking the police. He doesn't say anything about police crime or criminal activity within the police force and what he would do in order to stop that from happening. The only check that the police have in Pueblo County, besides the sheriff, is the executive branch, is the county kings. It is the 3 county commissioners. So Sal Pace and Garrison Ortiz and Terry Hart are all above the sheriff's branch. They're all above it. They're the executive branch. They could tell them limp dick Trumpism has come to Pueblo County if Zach Swearingen is elected. Limp dick fascism has come into it. The third, so Zachary Lundergan Swearingen the third is a limp dick fascist fuck twat dickhole schmegmug McGee. Okay? He's going to be a limp dick, no check on the police. There's good and bad police, but Zach doesn't seem to understand that. And he also needs to understand that he's above the police. So he's the judge. He's going to be the one that says, you're the good cop, you're the bad cop, or you did this, this is how this should proceed. So there's only 3 county kings. There's only, he's the executive, one of the 3 executives who can check the police branch properly. If the police don't police themselves, who polices the police? The 3 county commissioners polices the police. They do it by soft power. They do it by hard power too, but soft power through the budget. If Zach Swearingen isn't policing the police, and the 3 county kings, the 3 county executive / legislator kings, look at the things he's for. He's for a gang task force. Okay, we need to go after the gangs, but isn't the whole police force a gang task force? Isn't that the whole point? You're talking like Vic Mackey. He wants the special teams with the sheriff's department, so maybe he wants to run special teams, right? Just like he was back in Nam or Afghanistan or wherever he was fighting. So the Viper Squad, it's just like the Viper Squad in Louisville. You have the general police, and then you have a special teams of police that can do anything and everything, including breaking the law, but they keep everything quiet and they, keep the town. So, or how about the investigators out of the prosecutor's office? So there's lots of different things. What is he's trying to create his own police force here. So he wants to get, what, those investigators out of the prosecutor's office, or are they going to be their own thing? And then is he going to get it from the sheriff's department, or what? What's his plan here? My main point is that he doesn't know the 3 branches, so he's not going to provide any kind of check on the police. He can't admit that cops could do wrong. To err is human. To err is human. But if you put on a badge and all of a sudden you get some state authority, you can't do anything wrong. Once an error-prone human puts on a badge, then that man, who is clearly a bad, horrible person, if he doesn't have power, now that he has power, he can do no wrong. So are you saying power is the antidote to crime and corruption? I guess that's one way to pacify the gangs. Hire them. Get them into the police force, and then let them check themselves. If only the police are checking themselves, then that means we have absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there will be no checks and balances. His legal expertise is waning. Cops will be able to commit whatever outrages and atrocities they can get away with, and Zach Swearingen won't do a fucking thing about it. Just like when John McCain blew up, killed 130 American sailors in the Gulf of Tonkin off the govt